Well, time for your Friday update. As you can tell, I'm still wearing a Hawaiian shirt, but it is about 20-something degrees out. Fall has officially hit here in Indiana, and we're also in the middle of a huge power outage on campus. So we got about 40 buildings that lost power a couple hours ago, and we're trying to figure out what to do with that. We got folks that are working on that, though. I know the EOC is Emergency Operations Center is working on that. So that's not what I'm going to talk about today. Actually, what I'm going to talk about today is two things. And first off, what brings me down here to this corner by Bryan Hall. So first off, if you look over my shoulder over here, you'll see Starbucks. We got a program going on at Starbucks today. It's called Coffee with a Vet. Some of our student veterans are handing out free coffee and sitting down and talking with folks about their experience as veterans as one of our Veterans Day programs. And we're doing that with Starbucks because this particular Starbucks donates the coffee for our Veterans Center. So about half of the coffee we use at the Veterans Center comes from them. But then you'll see the Gables that's back here in between, and then you'll see over on this side, other direction, on this side over here, the Lewis building. And this little corner right down here, which currently is 9-round kickboxing, years ago, before the Lewis building was built, right after World War II, that was actually the site of a house. And that house was the first Office of Veterans Affairs on campus. So we were located right next to the Gables, right across the street from Bryan Hall, and that was our first home. And we had that home all the way into the 1950s, and then I sort of lose track of it in the records. It's not real clear where that office went to or what happened after that. We know from folks that were here in the 60s and the 70s that there was not an office dedicated to all veteran students that was working to support them. And we know by the 80s and 90s that although we had some people in registrar financial aid that were doing the processing, there wasn't a veteran services person. In the late 90s, we started working on designating that person again, it seems. This is what I can tell from the records. And by the late 90s, we started having a person designated as their point of contact. And then in 2007, the Dean of Students created the Director of Veteran Support Services, which was first housed over in Franklin Hall, back over here in the basement of Franklin. And they were in there for a couple of years before they moved to the Indiana Memorial Union, where they were for about 8 years, which is where I came into the office at. And the Office of Veteran Support Services was housed across from the bowling alley there. And then last November, just over 1 year ago, we moved up to our current location and became the Center for Veteran and Military Students. So if you've never heard of the Center for Veteran and Military Students, that's why. We're only a year old. We literally turned a year old earlier this week. And that's where we're located now, up at 823 East 11th Street on the corner of 11th and Woodlawn by the fire station and Luddy Hall. But for a long time, this was the historic home right in this area and in Bryan Hall, which was actually converted after World War II to house veterans. They even lived in the president's boardroom because we had that influx of veterans that came in with nowhere to stay. And so all of that kind of happened in this area, and this was kind of the main hub of veteran activity for a long time before we moved to our current center. So that's your history update for today, and we'll see you next week.